All right, welcome everybody to our Tanya class. So special. You should know that the people who inspired this class to begin um, are still very much in my mind every time that we get this class and we discuss. And there's so much growth from this class, so it should be an aliyah for them, shamas. And again, the class is always open for sponsorship, so if you benefit from the class, you should always reach out to Rabbi Marcus Wolf and yeah, and you should see all the wonderful things that they're doing. Okay, so let us start. We are supposed to be doing Perek Vav, chapter 26 today. Now, I want to do like a brief intro into chapter 26 because now the Alter is kind of shifting gears. The first 25 chapters of the Tanya were all about kind of like building information, giving us the fundamentals, obviously all geared towards Avodas Hashem, right? The entire point of the Tanya is that we should be serving God, we should be serving the Eibishter, and that it should be something that feels relative to us, something that feels close to us, something that feels like it is attainable. And obviously, the Beinoni is a running theme throughout the Tanya because that is the way for us to feel like this closeness is attainable. So the first 25 chapters of the Tanya were all about kind of introducing this concept. It's a revolutionary idea. What are we actually talking about? Breaking up the terms, really redefining the way we all looked at Yiddishkeit or Neshama or community before, and kind of like reframe all of it. Now, I just want to kind of jog everyone's memory and remind you all that the reason why we have the Tanya is because the Alter Rebbe said that it was impossible for him to have any more private audiences with people. He was meeting with so many people all the time. He wrote the Tanya in order to service all those people out there who wanted to meet with him personally, but he just could not. So it builds off of the experience of having thousands and thousands of interviews and personal experiences, which we call yechidus, with his Hasidim, where he would give them guidance as to what their personal avodah, what their personal internal work should be in order to get closer to God. He couldn't do that any longer, so he put all that experience into the Tanya, and he literally labored over it for 20 years to make it a perfect volume, so that it could support anyone reaching out to it to find their own personal avodah Hashem, to find their own personal way to serve Hashem, to come close to Him, to create a relationship, to foster a relationship with the Eibishter. Now, a few pieces that were very important. He said it's important to learn it with a teacher. It's also important to do it with the idea of having a mashpia, someone you could discuss it with and say, hey, you know me, and you know what I need to work on, and you know that this might be the best fit for me. So like maybe this part of the Tanya is what I'm supposed to be living with, not that part of the Tanya. When I was in seminary in Israel, one of our rabbis had his focus was everyone should have one parak of Tanya that's meaningful to them. And you have to go on a journey and find that one parak that you live with all the time. And he chose a few of them for us to explore, and we all went home and memorized them and came back to him and just said it right back to him, memorized. And he looked at us and he was like, okay, good, now go memorize it 100 more times, and then 1,000 more times, and then let it actually sit inside your body and let your mind really percolate over what this truly means. And is this personally meaningful to you? And that's just a testament to what a teacher is supposed to do, right? A teacher is supposed to inspire you to learn and understand the ideas, but what a mashpia is supposed to do is sit down with you and say, I know you, and I know what you need here, and I know what part of Tanya you are supposed to be focusing on. Now, what's interesting is keeping that in mind, right? Keeping that within the context of how we're learning the Tanya. So the first yechidus that a chassid would come to his Rebbe for would always be about nigla. Nigla means about Torah, right? So if you had any questions about Torah, literally in the books, right? In the words, he had questions about that. That's what would be discussed with the Alter Rebbe at a first yechidus. Always, that was the Alter Rebbe's rule. So even if a person said, no, Rabbi, I know Torah, I'm coming to you because I want a relationship with the Eibishter, you would say, thank you very much. First, we're going to start with nigla. That was the first Yechidus always. Second Yechidus after that, and again, keep in mind, this is also a very important piece to remember. The Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe were not just regular people, right? A lot of these Chassidim were huge Torah scholars of their day, people who really implemented change, true Aveda. So if the Alter Rebbe said a word to them, they would live with it for a few years before they came back for a second Yechidus. So even after the first Yechidus, they're not coming back the next day. It's not like let me set up these dates with the Alter Rebbe and Tuesday and Wednesday will be my first and second Yechidus. No, that first Yechidus was supposed to be so meaningful to them that they would live with it for another year, 2 years, 3 years, and then come back for another Yechidus, kind of get that boost again to continue with our Avodas Hashem. Now, and it's also important to know that people would, these Hasidim, would prepare not just for months, for years before actually meeting the Alter Rebbe. With our Rebbe, people would rent a mikvah before they actually went to see the Rebbe, because obviously you can't go to the Rebbe before having done something to prepare yourself. We're talking about Hasidim who were very, very, very holy people, and they would prepare. They would really work on themselves to be in a space to receive from the Alter Rebbe. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a chassid who came for his first Yechidus, had a nigla chassidus, a few years later came for his second Yechidus, and the thing with the second Yechidus is now it's personal Avodah. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to talk to you as a chassid, who you are, and he's going to tell you what you need to work on in your Avodas Hashem. Perek Chavav is the part of the Tanya where that chassid went home and he worked on himself for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and he's coming now back to the Alter Rebbe and he's saying, Rebbe, I had that Yechidus with you. I had that first personalized Yechidus with you. I know what the Alter Rebbe shared with me was absolute truth and what I needed to hear. And I know that I'm working really hard. It's not like a chassid like that was lazy and just said I can't. It's just not working. Something's missing for me here. So it's almost like this timeline or this storyline of the chassid who's coming back by this 26th chapter, and he's saying, there's something missing for me here. I know what you shared with me was truth, and I know that I'm really working hard at it, but I'm not achieving that level, that relationship that I want with Abishter the way you outlined it, or you highlighted it to be. So something is missing, and that's here what we're up to. Perek Chavav begins almost like the troubleshooting part of the time now, where we're looking at, so if you've gone through Perek Aleph through Chaf Hey, why are you still struggling? What's still coming up for you? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe this is coming up for you. So the middle chunk of the Tanya is basically that troubleshooting experience where the Alter Rebbe is saying, okay, so this didn't work out, let's look at this area of your life. Let's look at this area of your life. So that's what we're up to now, and I felt like it was important to just throw that in. Just an interesting story to kind of highlight the difference of what Chassidus was bringing. Because right during the time of the Alter Rebbe and of course his spiritual grandfather Baal Shem Tov, what they were bringing was something innovative, something very different. So the people who were coming in for Yechidus were coming for that difference. They wanted to hear what was different. They had heard about the Baal Shem Tov, they had heard about the Alter Rebbe. They knew that there was something here for them to gain from. They felt it. That's why they were coming. These people were great Torah scholars, right? So what was the difference? What was it that made this experience, or what made Chassidus different for them that they were drawn to? Most of these people were good Jews, right? They were listening to every single halacha. They were learning Torah constantly. So what did they still have yet to gain? What they had to gain from the Yechidus of the Alter Rebbe or Yechidus of the Baal Shem Tov was that inspiration of being a good Jew. It's not enough to just tick off the boxes. It's not enough to just make sure that everything is covered. It's what's inspiring you to stay tznius. What's inspiring you to make sure to light Shabbos candles on time? What's motivating you to show up? And the answer to that, Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe's innovation, was a relationship with Eibishter. It's not just doing the right thing. It's not just about the doing. It's about experiencing a closeness with them. It's about that inspiration, that motivation. These people were very pious, right? They were very holy people, but they weren't necessarily feeling inspired. Right? There were so many stories of people coming in saying, "Okay, this is the first time at the Baal Shem Tov," and I think there's actually a story with the Maggid for the first time coming into. You don't have to go through his whole experience, but the first time the Maggid came to speak with the Baal Shem Tov, he wasn't so impressed, and he wanted to leave. And then the second time he had the Yechidus with the Baal Shem Tov, he walked in, and it was almost as if he saw the Baal Shem Tov consumed with fire. That's what he saw. All he saw was a spiritual fire, like consuming the Alter Rebbe. Now, obviously, that speaks a lot on the Maggid Mezrich, that he was able to see a spiritual fire, right? See that struggle between heaven and earth, struggle between the Baal Shem Tov staying grounded in this earth and at the same time being entirely consumed in the Yigshter's light. And that does reflect on how great the Maggid was, of course. But it's also something beautiful to just note about the Baal Shem Tov. What was the Baal Shem Tov? He was consumed with inspiration. He was fiery, burning with passion towards the Yigshter. And that wasn't something that you saw or noted about Yidden or about the learned of that time period. People of that time period who were very learned, who were very pious, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more. Their characteristics were quiet, reserved, in their own world, very serious, very intense. Those were the characteristics of the learned scholars of those days. The Baal Shem Tov had something entirely different to offer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in Perek. But first I just want to share with you this interesting story. So there's a story about the Rogatchover, who was an absolute genius, and the Rebbe actually admired him tremendously. He was a mentor of sorts to the Rebbe. Anyway, so the Rogatchover was always looking for people who could match his genius. So he would, in ways, kind of like assess people on how smart they were, or how much Torah they knew. So one time he met with the Rav of Lublin. His name was Shneir Zalman Fragment. He was actually the Ron Chassid of Tzedek. And even before he walked through the door, he was already throwing Torah sources at Rosh Hashanah, and they were both basically arguing, but for the sake of Torah, for hours and hours and hours and hours. And the Rogatchover loved it. Finally, he met his match. Finally met someone who could actually have a conversation with him. And to finish the conversation, he asked him, "Who else did I talk to like you? Like someone who actually I could carry a conversation with?" And so this Rav tells him, "Go speak to the Lunar Rebbe." It's fine, so he goes to have kind of like a yechidus with him. And again, before he's even walking through the door, he's already throwing Torah sources. They're not even actually saying words of Torah. They're just saying pages. Arguing with each other with the pages, because you have to have some sort of photographic memory, to know what is on that page. And this Rebbe didn't take the bait, and he was just sitting there listening to him, and he keeps throwing sources at him. He's trying to engage with him, and he's just not taking it. He's not engaging in the conversation. But the previous Rosh Hashanah told him that this is a tzaddik, this is someone who has great Torah knowledge. Why is he not engaging with him? The Rosh Hashanah was so confused. And finally, this Rabbi of Lublin said, "I used to be like you too. I used to try to go up to every single person and see who is someone that I can properly engage with. Who can I respect? Who is beneath me? Who is greater than me? Who could I, have this back and forth with?" And he says, "I grew out of that. Find yourself a Rebbe and let him teach you how to be a Yid. What it means to have a relationship with the Yigshter." We're talking about someone who is a tzaddik, right? Someone who is a huge Torah scholar. And yet, he spoke to him with very strong language and said, "Go find yourself a Rebbe and let him teach you what it means to be close to the Yigshter." So why is that important? Why is that story relevant here? Because It's showing the nuance of what Chassidus brought to the table. Chassidus brought something much more than just doing the right thing, following halacha, making sure that you know Torah well. It brought inspiration to the table. It brought passion. It brought relationship to the table, feeling a sense of closeness. That's what was important according to Chassidus. That's what was a huge pivotal response to what was happening at the time. There's actually another interesting story about Rav Perek. Rav Perek really wanted to meet the Alter Rebbe, never had a chance. He actually was trying to meet with the Alter Rebbe a few different times, and each time he somehow missed it. He would travel to the city where the Alter Rebbe was, and then the Alter Rebbe already moved on, or he missed him by a few days. And finally, he found out where the Alter Rebbe was going to be ahead of time, traveled there before, found out which inn he was going to stay at, which room he was going to be in, went into that room, and waited for the Alter Rebbe to come. He was not going to miss this chance, right? He was ready. He wanted to meet the Alter Rebbe. Obviously, had done a tremendous amount to prepare himself to meet with the Alter Rebbe. And remember, this is going to be a first Yechidus, so it's supposed to be a nigli Yechidus. So he's there, he's waiting. The Alter Rebbe walks into the room, immediately stops, does not see him because he was somewhat hidden. I'm not sure if he was hiding on purpose or not. It's unclear. And he just immediately says this: a person who has questions in Erchin, which means evaluations, should first evaluate himself. Now, Rav Perek was in that segment of the Gemara, and he hears this statement. A person who is in the middle of Erchin should first evaluate himself. What was happening here? The Alter Rebbe, he went against his rule. Instead of doing only a nigla Yechidus first, where you're supposed to talk about the portion of Torah that person is up to or is in the middle of, he skipped to the personal Avodas Hashem Yechidus. And after he said those words, Rav Perek fainted. The Alter Rebbe was only there for a little bit, moved on, and Rav never actually saw the Alter Rebbe. He only heard his voice. He never actually saw him. He later on became the Mitzvah Rebbe's chassid, but it's just like a fascinating experience. He wasn't supposed to become a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He was meant to become a chassid of the Mitzvah Rebbe. But what's so beautiful is he heard just that sentence, that one should evaluate themselves. And to him, it was such a powerful moment of self-exploration that just from the immensity of it, he fainted. What's the messaging there? It's not enough. Right? Rav Perek was not doing anything wrong. An absolute tzaddik across the board. What is he evaluating? What is he supposed to be looking at? What was so intense that he fainted? There was no averse on his resume. Nothing. But that internal experience of where am I in my relationship with the Eibishter? What am I up to? Is there a passion? Is there an investment here? Is there a motivation? That second guessing of himself, that's what Chassidus was bringing to the table. That was what he felt was missing. And so he fainted from the shock of it. And of course, set forth after that to work on himself, and then later became Chassid of the Mitzvah Rebbe. So, what does Perek Chava bring to us here? The Alter Rebbe says, if you're still struggling, we've been through first and second Yechidus, we've been through second Yechidus, and you're still struggling, there must be something that's happening here. What's happening here? You don't have enough zrizos, which is a very interesting thing to hear. Chassid is coming to the Alter Rebbe with questions in the Avodas Hashem. I want to feel close to the Eibishter. I'm not feeling the closest that I want to feel. And the Alter Rebbe says it is pivotal for you to have the attribute of zrizos. Zrizos in English means alacrity. It's a great word. Alacrity means having energy. It means feeling passionate. It means feeling alive. It means going forth and accomplishing what you've set your mind to with precision and with almost like a lightness, right? Someone who has zrizos is light on their feet. That is what zrizos is. And now Rebbe says, this is crucial. This is a cornerstone for serving the Yevishter. There's no way to serve the Yevishter without reasons, and if you're still not feeling it, if you're not having what I told you you should be having, you're not experiencing that level of Avodas Hashem yet, it's because you're lacking reasons. And that is a really nuanced experience, right? For this chassid, for all of us to hear that alacrity. What is alacrity? Feels like a personality. Well, do I have to change my personality now? What does it mean that alacrity is going to change my whole Avodas Hashem? Let's look at what alacrity is and also what it's connected to. Because it's not just one word unto itself. In order to have alacrity, there's a lot of other things that kind of builds to be able to have something like that. So first of all, it's not a personality trait. It is a trait, but it's not something that you can't attain. It's not unattainable. It's not like I was born with this kind of way of looking at the world, and I can never look at the way of the world in any other way, right? Sometimes we talk about the concept of someone having a Meirish Shira. It's like a heavier personality. The Rebbe actually admitted that himself, having a Meirish Shira. His natural inclination towards the world was very serious, very intense, very focused. That was the Rebbe's forerunning personality. And yet at the same time, the Rebbe was an absolute wellspring of joy. Everyone talks about the Rebbe's smiling eyes, about the Rebbe's smile, what that did for them, how it inspired them. The Rebbe literally reflected to people the joy, the happiness, the positivity constantly, right? That was the theme, a running theme throughout every single letter that you read about the Rebbe. How many times does the Rebbe say, I'm surprised at the heaviness, I'm surprised at the depression, I don't understand why you're so upset. If a person truly feels connected to the Yevishter, then they wouldn't be experiencing something like this. So let's talk a little bit about Simcha and why that is a centerpiece of Chassidus. It's interesting to look at the Oxford Dictionary's definition of Chassidus. It actually speaks about this. I know for us, we're only learning this in Perek above, but the Oxford Dictionary says that what is Chassidus? Obviously says it's an extremist, right? Movement who believes in an immanent God, and they serve God with joy. This is the definition of what Hasidism was. This is what the innovation of what the Baal Shem Tov brought. So, what's stopping us from experiencing joy? What's stopping us from experiencing alacrity? And why does that hinder us in our service of the Yevishter? So, if you think about it, someone who has alacrity, someone who's experiencing joy, they're uninhibited, right? There's like a free expression, a levitic person, right? You could feel like they're lighter, they're lifting up. What is it about that brings you to a state of Avodas Hashem? Well, if you can just think about this for a moment, right? If you were to assess 3 people in a row, one person is very learned, very serious, very intense. The next person is busy, active, working. You look at his face and he looks like he's taking care of the world, he's on it. And then you look at the last person, and that person is just like telling jokes and talking to people, and he's like meandering from one person to the next person, smiling, easygoing, chill, the way people would say nowadays. Who, when you look at all 3 of these people, would you say is the most humble? Who is the most humble from all 3 of these people? So we have a number 2 in the background. I saw somebody else. 1, 2, and 3. Remember, so the first person is very intense and reserved. The next person is someone who is very active, feels like they're carrying the world, like they're taking care of things, very busy. And the third person is telling jokes, walking around, kind of like easygoing. Number 1. We got a number 1, we got a number 2. So, and what'd you say?
Like in the God of Pesach.
Like in the other.
Chacham.
Right. I hear you. There's a few. So during the times of Baal Shem Tov, everyone would have said number one or number two. Right? Number one, obviously he's the most humble. He's sitting to himself, he's learning, he's intense. Of course he's more humble. The next person, that person who's like, I don't know, part of it's all saving everybody. It looks like he also is very humble, right? Look what he gives his life to community. The innovation of Hasidus is when we look at humble, we're looking at making space. Making space, not you taking up space, but letting others into your space. A person who's intense and reserved is doing so often because they're protecting themselves. There's a lot going on inside. They're trying to make sure that nobody sees them in the wrong light. There's a lot of barriers, a lot of shields, a lot of guards to make sure that they're always looking perfect. The other person who's, making sure that they're taking care of the world and taking care of everything, yes, of course, they're giving themselves over to community and not, Sean said anything wrong, that's all the numbers are incredible. What I am trying to say is like that kind of personality, like that Machar kind of personality, could be humble. It definitely could be, but it also could be about yourself and feeling good about contributing to society and feeling good about that, right? That's not necessarily humble. A person who's happy, who's telling jokes, who's light, who's not taking themselves seriously, makes space for others. That person is not thinking about themselves all the time, like person number one. They're not trying to justify their existence all the time, like person number two. They just are. And they're able to connect with others. There's this free flow of energy. It's because there's not so much space here. They're just letting it be. They don't take themselves seriously. They're not obsessed with thinking about themselves all the time. There's a lightness. What they're experiencing is joy. Joy is not happiness. Happiness is, I don't want to say it's momentary, but happiness is more of like an experience based on something, right? So it could be something as superficial as getting a new car, and as deep and as incredible as having a baby, right? That happiness could be so immense, but it's a result of something. As opposed to joy, joy is an inner experience. It's not because something happened, it's when we push everything away and we see who we are. Joy is existing because Hashem keeps me in existence. It's discovering that part of yourself that is always there, forever there. It's literally a recognition of Neshama. That's when you experience like a freedom. The thing that stops us from experiencing freedom, the thing that stops us from experiencing joy is that struggle between me and my personality and my thoughts and my ambitions and my coping mechanisms and what I do to protect myself and the things that I need to think about in order to make sure that everybody else is happy and all those things that mire me down, as opposed to just living that internal inner joy of Hashem wants me here, Hashem loves me, I am here, I exist, I'm alive, right? I'm here, I am alive. That's what joy is supposed to be. It's not based on other people, on our kids, on our husband, on anything. It's based on me being here and being alive, feeling the Shema, which is my source of aliveness. That's what joy is supposed to be. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov was bringing, that innovation of Chassidim dancing. There was never such a thing that people would dance during davening. There was never such a thing even that they would sing so much during davening. Davening was not a lot of singing in those times. So singing and dancing, letting yourself loose was very much frowned upon in those days. Not just because it wasn't respectful for a Torah scholar, or literally Torah scholars would look at themselves as a Sefer Torah. Like, I am a Sefer Torah in my head, so you should stand up for me because this is who I am. You treat a Sefer Torah with absolute respect and dignity. This is how you should see me. So I also have to behave like that all the time. you can hear how that in ways could be so self-involved as opposed to God-oriented, right? There's no space for God in that picture when one is so focused on me being a Torah scholar. So this innovation of simcha, of letting yourself loose, of feeling that free expression is very scary to people. Obviously very liberating for Chassidin, but very, very scary to people. And even nowadays, it's very scary for a person to say like, well, I could just be happy. I could just like dance without inhibition. What does that even look like? Now, it is true that if a person loses themselves in their happiness, then it could be, right? So even the Gemara says, in Golos you can't be completely happy, and there's even, right, the famous story of David Melech dancing in front of the Arim, and his wife criticizing him and saying, you're not treating yourself with respect, you're not dancing, you're not acting like a true king. A king doesn't dance like that, just loses himself. And abandonment of joy looks like it's out of control. You're always supposed to behave in a dignified manner. And David Melech responded that there's never a space of joy that God is not in. Meaning, if I'm experiencing that joy, that aliveness, that revelation of my neshama, then that is absolute dignity. And if you can't see that, then you're not in this space of absolute dignity. So there's this interesting story. It's actually
It's
right
like it happens Purim, so that Purim when people goes wild
Right.
instead of be happy and enjoy.
Right. And it shouldn't be limited to just Purim, right? It shouldn't be limited just to either. It should be something we're feeling all the time. But the things that stop us, right? So let's talk about the things that stop us, and I'll share with you the story, and we'll end up with the Altarabba's example. So what are the things that stop us? A lot of fear, right? So we're afraid that people will judge us. We're afraid that people will look at us differently. We're afraid that we're afraid of our own judgment of ourselves, right? It's scary to let go and to be joyful. There's a lot of inner talk, a lot of voices ringing around our heads. To experience something like that just doesn't feel right. When actually, those are the things that are stopping you from experiencing what you really want to experience, or who you really are. But it's all those voices that are stopping you from experiencing that immense joy. Something that I shared with other people in my workshops are, there's also a lot of things that stop us from feeling joy because it's been a practice of stopping ourselves from feeling joy. So, for example, you want to say something?
Yeah, but let's say a wedding or Greece, we go wild. That's what it is.
Maybe some people do, not everybody.
I mean,
I've never been at a wild
no,
place.
I mean, they drink, they dance, is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. Beautiful. So I know for myself that having been in a space of, let's say, trying to be realistic, right? So in an effort to be realistic, or in an effort to be a grown-up, or to be practical, or to be pragmatic, I will shut down, let's say, ideas or things that might make me happy. Or I might say, oh, I don't have time to meet with this friend today. You know, I know that it would be so nice to meet with that friend, and it would fill me up and make me feel so connected, even just Yiddish Torah learning. I don't have time for that today because I have to take care of this kid, or I have to take care of this job, or this important detail of my life. And when you do that, and you do that enough, it starts becoming very painful in your head, because your brain wants to experience the joy of whatever it is that you're thinking about. And so there's this release of that happy energy in your brain. But then when you shut it down again with a different thought, it's actually a very painful experience internally in your brain. And so if that happens again and again and again, your brain wants to stop thinking about all those happy things, because it takes too much effort to initiate something exciting and for then it to be shut down. Like, I don't know about you, but I've definitely had experiences, let's say, talking to one of my kids and saying, like, I have this idea, how about this solution, what do you think about this, we could resolve it this way. And each thing is just shut down, shut down, shut down. And it's like, I'm trying to work with you here. I can't do, so your brain is almost saying, I'm trying to work with you here, trying to make you happy, trying to think of something good, exciting. But then there's that shutting down experience again and again and again, and that's not fun. And so in ways we could almost stop ourselves from experiencing even just happiness because we're again and again
We lose
stopping
the
ourselves.
energy.
What?
We lose the energy.
Exactly. It takes a lot of energy to keep on pushing against the wall, right?
Yeah.
So, and then imagine if, I remember one time someone came to my class and she said, I would love to go biking. She loves biking. She used to bike wherever she was before she moved here. But now she feels like she can't do this because she lives in the Jewish community and she feels like it wouldn't be viewed correctly. But every day she thinks about it. Every day she walks out of her door and she sees her bike parked at the front door and she can't ride it. It's such an awful experience because she keeps on telling herself, no, I can't do that. I have kids to marry off, but all of her voices, right? Everything going on in her head. And that makes her experience on a daily basis pain instead of happiness. Now take that now and bring that to your Avodah Hashem. It's hard enough to get attuned to ourselves spiritually, right? And even just that is a challenge. Forget about trying to experience the inner true joy of feeling aliveness from the Abishter. We have so many things stopping us. So in the next few classes, we're going to be discussing what that looks like how we could push past that, how we could get around, or trick it sometimes, right? Happiness is or joy is one of the only things, one of the few emotions, I don't even know if there are other ones. Maybe anger you could also kind of develop. But when it comes to joy, if you slap a smile on your face and act joyous, you can end up feeling happy too. I remember having a bad day when I was a preschool teacher once, and I just really started off the day and I was not feeling it. But you can't not be smiling when you're around little kids. So, at 8 a.m., I was not okay. But then by 8:30, because that's when school started, I put on that smile and I'm happy and I'm interacting with the kids. And by 8:35, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, I don't feel it as much because Hashem gave us that gift that in ways it's easier for us to get attuned to our happiness than for us to get stuck. However, we are very much stuck in many different ways, so we're going to be talking about that next week. I just want to finish off with this very sweet story and the mashal that the Alter Rebbe talks about in Perek. So there's the story of Reb Chaim Binyamin Bruz, who moved to Eretz Yisrael in the 1960s from Russia. So we're talking about communist Russia, and he finally got out. And he makes it to Eretz Yisrael, and he lands, this airplane lands, he comes out, and he just starts dancing. He was a wrestler, he was so thrilled to be in Eretz Yisrael, and he starts dancing, and the KGB noticed this. Now, I don't understand the details of the story, why maybe the KGB were also in Eretz Yisrael, I'm not exactly sure, but the KGB officers who there noticed this, and one says to the other, it's a chutzpah, and they want to do something, so upsetting. He comes from the incredible country of Russia, Mother Russia, and he lands in this godforsaken Israel, and he starts dancing, it's a chutzpah, and the other KGB officer tells him, it's not such a chutzpah, he used to dance like that also in Russia. Right? So even when things were terrible, he was also dancing. Even in Mother Russia, he was also dancing, so it's not such an insult. What's so beautiful about that story? This person was constantly on his feet dancing. The good, the bad, the ugly, he was there, he was dancing. He was always lit, always happy. Nothing can get him down. And I want to share with you a few more stories next time about...
I saw the best of times. It was happy.
Exactly, best of times and worst of times. So the mashal that the Alter Rebbe gives is a very interesting mashal. He says, imagine two people fighting or grappling with each other. And they're both evenly matched. And they both cannot overcome the other. And they're fighting, they're wrestling back and forth, each one trying to bring the other down. And there's just a difference in personality. And that difference in personality is that one of them is happy. one of them is positive. And because of that, that person is going to win. And it's a very, very profound concept. You would think that if you're in a fight, right? No one should be fighting here, but imagine two people fighting in wrestling. It should be only about your muscle strength and your, what's it called, your index and how much weight you have and how much training you put into your experience here. How many teachers you've had to give you pointers. And as I was saying here, it's not just about that. When you're engaged in a struggle, which is what the Bainini is engaged with all the time, the Bainini is the struggler. So if we have two people who are struggling here, and they're both equally matched when it comes to physical proportions and everything else, the person who is going to win is the person who is happier and has a positive perspective on things. That's what he's trying to illustrate here with Jesus. The person who has alacrity, he's lighter on his feet. He has the power. He has more aliveness that he's attuned to. He's more alive. He's more energized. He's motivated. That will help him win in the end. So the messaging here, right now, we're still in the middle of Perek is the person who has that alacrity, that's Jesus, it will push you forward. Whether you're feeling it or not, the Alter says, nothing's working so far, try this. Let's try working on this first. How is your happiness? Literally like the doctor, how are you feeling in the morning? How's your joy? Check in with yourself. What's your internal temperature? Am I feeling happy? Because if I'm feeling frustrated, if I'm feeling heavy, if I'm feeling serious, very intense, then something might be wrong in my Avodas Hashem. I remember, I probably shared this with you before, but I remember asking a rabbi in seminary, what's wrong with my davening? Because I felt like I was really concentrating, I was trying so hard, it was so intense, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't achieving what I was trying to get to with my davening. And he says, it sounds like you're doing it all wrong. It's not supposed to be intense. You're not supposed to be furrowing your eyebrows. You're not supposed to be shuffling back and forth so hard. You shouldn't be giving yourself a headache. It's supposed to be joyful. It's supposed to be light. You're supposed to feel alive. And it's not necessarily easy to get attuned to that deep part of yourself. So even if you have just a few moments of that while you're davening, it's beautiful. But it's definitely not looking the way you're describing it. So something for us all, hopefully, to take away with us for this week is, if I'm feeling down, what can I do to help myself snap out of it, get out of it, do something for another person, do a chesed, fill yourself up. Maybe it's even just like a physical filling yourself up. Maybe just eat something, get some exercise, get some fresh air. But that will help you towards that Jesus alacrity joy that we have to have in order to serve the Eibishter. Because serving Eibishter is all about less of me, more of him. So if there's more of me, I need to do something about that. We need to clear. That clearing comes with having that attribute of alacrity. So hopefully next time, and maybe even the next time after that, we'll be talking about what that looks like. Perek. It's a beautiful Perek, so I'm happy to spend a lot of time on it.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful day.
Beautiful. Thank you.